All right, so before I go working on the steering bots and stuff, the last thing I want to do is go working around this tire. So let's go ahead and get him pulled off right quick. All right, so last time we ended up getting that dash built for this thing. Ended up getting the columns somewhat set in place where we needed it to be at. We already knew that we were going to have a problem with this body trying to mount, once again, 74 drive line chassis, everything else, 56 body. Enough things change in between there. Steering column length is also going to be part of that too. So today, that's what we're going to work on. A couple things need to be done, which is just getting the threads and everything, not really threads, the splines cleaned up on this inner, how do I say it here, the steering bots that's there. I already got threads cleaned up on this. I'm actually going to take this thing back apart. I'd already done it before. This is, I don't know, I call it kind of like a U-joint, but also not a U-joint either, like your traditional sense of U-joints that are here. So it's super easy to rebuild. It's a little bit more costly though. It's about $100 for the rebuild on it, but it's got everything inside of it. So I will take this thing back apart during the video and actually be able to show you guys how to rebuild this as well. Super simple, kind of intimidating though. Clearly this U-joint here is radded out as well, so it's going to be good enough to get us to a test fit, but in reality, we're most likely going to end up having to cut this shaft today, get it shortened down to the size that we need, and then I'll show you how we're going to rebuild that too. So stay tuned. So I did go ahead and opt to put this thing on jack stands. I really want this thing to try to stay level while I'm trying to get this steering shaft aligned and stuff. I don't want one side to be leaning to the other. Now, granted, there is a little bit of slope inside the floor and everything, but we're there in close enough terms that are with it. So hey, let's get into what we're looking at here, which is going to be this steering shaft. It is caked up with God knows how many years of just junk, grit, and everything else. There is loose grease and stuff that's inside of there too, and it just kind of makes this perfect mess of junk that needs to be cleaned out of there. I really don't want to I just replaced that U-joint piece I was talking about. I really don't want to go and clog it up full of stuff. So it's going to be a whole lot of me just taking and scraping this stuff out at first to try to get it cleaned up. So before we go to test fit, I talked about how this is kind of like, I don't know, still once again, I call it just kind of a mobile U-joint, just a factory style thing that they had on 74s. Take this thing apart. It's really quite simple. This one, like I say, I've already rebuilt before I started making videos. So let's take it apart right quick and actually see how this thing works. Now I will say there's a retainer. You see an ear there and an ear there. You got to get this retainer clip out, which might be kind of the more challenging thing to do on video. Not taking it out, but putting it back in. I remember having to really kind of put my nose to it inside of here. And it shoots off a million miles away. Okay, so then that sleeve will pull back. We've got plenty of fresh grease in there. There's a seal that's going to be inside of it there. You also see with grease. And then this whole mechanism just slides out. Now what makes it kind of unique is you see where it's got those two areas like what a traditional U-joint might have. And then you see those two blots right there. And that's kind of what they're serving as. There's this minor like tensioner clip that keeps tension out on those. That's really all that it is to do that. What's cool about it though is once it's all put together, you have movement back and forth. So they really kind of unique compared to what a traditional U-joint is. And I say, I don't know how strong they are. We're going to find out what OEM had to begin with as far as strength goes, but I like the concept anyway. So let's start trying to fit this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and not put that collar on that would be used to retain that. This piece here specifically, which will be locked in on there. I want to do this so that way I got kind of an alignment to understand that groove that's there, that I'm fitting inside of it where I need to be. So we're going to leave it loose for right now. And then we're going to come up here to where our actual steering column is. I'm probably going to have to sit you down to be able to do this. So come up here to where the steering column meets up to. And right now, I'm not going to get too fancy with it. I'm just going to get a rough idea. So I know where this bolt goes through is where that part needs to be. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to roughly make a mark where that line is through there. So we're just going to get it close for right now, go make a premature cut on it, and then start sectioning ourselves in to get closer and closer with it through there. So to make myself a little bit clearer on what I'm trying to do here, this is that reference mark I made to try to roughly line up where that U-joint bolt alignment, retainer is going to be at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a measurement that's to that, which is 4 and, let's look at it here, 4 1/4 is what we're going to call that through there. So 4 1/4 is what I roughly think that I need to section out through here. And I don't want to make that cut through here. I want to end up making that cut somewhere in the middle of this bar. So that way I can section this down through there. I don't want to put it real close to where the tension of that U-joint's going to be. If you're curious what's coming, we're going to get it cut. We're going to get it sectioned to where the size that it needs to be. And then what I need to do is I don't want to just try to just put these two pieces together and butt weld them around. I don't think it's ever going to last. But if I can get them to where they're lined up, then I want to take and sleeve this piece of pipe over it to be able to effectively make a weld on one side of the cut, a weld on the other side of the cut, and I actually want to drill a series of holes through here so I can do plug welds inside of this too. In theory, it's still a weak spot, but in reality, I hope that it's going to be strong enough to do what I need to do with it there. All right, we got her clamped up. There's no going back now. I actually did a remeasurement off camera through that because I had this thing completely collapsed. So I actually pulled it out a little bit. Ended up being 4 5/8 inches that I cut out of these two total pieces. What you didn't see me cut was the actual joint here, or this kind of, however you want to call it, splice. I cut this thing 8 inches. So I'm going to have 4 inches on each side, which I think will be sufficient for it. So to make it a little bit easier on fitment, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and measure that 4 inches because I'm not going to go tack weld it or anything right now. But I got an idea how I can still hold it in place. So I got 4 inches there marked. I'm going to take and slide my piece of pipe over it, which works out perfect. And then I'm going to put a pair of vice grips to kind of keep it just right where I need it to be at for right now anyway. So until I get it welded. All it's going to really do is just control how deep the thing's, make sure it's not just going to slide all the way to the bottom. This one here I can slide into place. Okay, and then we're ready to start fitting her up. I do want to let's put a little lubricant on these things. So these joints, I cleaned them up the best that I could where these splines and stuff are, but they're still pretty rusty to say the least. So I'm going to put a little bit in there. We got a little bit in there already. So I still don't have my collared piece going on to the steering box yet. I'm going to keep holding off on him until I get a little bit closer on this, which we're pretty close as it is. So get my joints lined up there. And voila, we got ourselves steering shaft. We're tight on the inside through there. That's tight through there, but also has play. I think we did pretty good. So I'm going to go through and just double check everything. I'll probably flex the suspension too, just to make sure that this steering shaft isn't going to make contact with that either. Right now, everything's kind of loose. So if I need to find a problem, I want to find it now versus later. So, and we still got this junk U-joint to deal with as well. So whenever it comes to putting this sleeve on, I don't want to just make a weld around the outside like this and be like, yeah, it's good to go. Steering's going to be under an immense amount of stress all the time with it. So I'm not only going to do this edge joint that's through here, but I'm also going to make a series of holes. Now, on a collision standpoint, this will be a plug weld. Plug welds generally on, let's just range it from 14 to 18 gauge metal will fall into an 8mm plug weld. However, you can get into more structural sides of things where it goes 10 millimeters on that. And that's actually what I'm going to do right here. Now, I don't have a 10mm spot weld drill bit with me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this at 7/16. And that way I've got more than enough area that I can make a hot enough weld to that solid, I think it's 3/4 inch steel bar that's inside of that. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to make a series on each side. So one here, and then opposing sides as well. And I got one more trick up my sleeve, because I'm sure you're wondering, are the welds going to be enough? I got one more fail proof that's going to be coming up too. So get started with our drill bits through here. I like laying them out exactly the ones that I'm going to use. So I've got a series of 4 different ones all the way up to 7/16. I am very picky about keeping a drill bit oiled well enough. And so you'll see me constantly dipping into an oil as I go too. Also super picky on exact placement of these things. It just drives me nuts seeing them in different locations. Double check one more time to make sure I remembered it right. Yes. If you don't have one of these spring-loaded center punches, you're living in the Stone Age. Ever since I got this, I haven't used a center punch and a hammer ever since then. These things are just too convenient and work too well for as simple of a design as what they are. Okay, first hole done. A little bit of oil. Second hole done. I don't try to jump them up too big either. Try to just keep them stationarily keep them paced out even enough to keep going well, or to keep going whole size to whole size up. Final one here, 7/16. Something I've never had in this shop is a drill press. I've worked at places where they had drill presses. Man, what a difference it makes just not having to do it all by hand with a drill like I'm doing right now. Just the precision's there. It's safer. Not going to worry about it trying to rip out and bust you in the jaw whenever the bit catches. Okay, so we got those holes cleaned out. We got our slop and trash cleaned out of the backside. I'm going to put this down time lapse. I'm going to get my other holes drilled. All right, so we got our holes drilled on each side, opposing to each other as well. And I got looking at it, and we've got a whole lot of real estate here. This thing makes a butt joint inside of here, or 2 pieces that go in. And I got thinking, why not go ahead and put a series of holes that are opposing on this point? So that gives me 4 different plug welds, technically in both sides, like both directions that are there. So I think we're going to do that now. I'm going to go ahead and drill some more holes that are through there. So now that we got that intermediate steering shaft kind of figured out, we need to start setting things permanent. It's what we need to do. So the first thing I'm going to start with is, well, in reality, first thing, the steering box is already permanently mounted. The next thing is going to be, let's get our column actually permanently mounted inside of here. So you can see where this is an oversized hole, as it should be. It gives me a little bit of adjustment either which way. But in reality, I need to get that not only sealed up, but locked in place. So what I've done, once again, my favorite old particle board stuff, I've made a template that's here. This is an 1.5 inch wide circle is what we have, 1.5 inch wide though. So I took a hole saw and used it to make my guide inside of here. Now the problem is that shaft doesn't come straight out. So what I needed to do was get it oblong. So that's what I ended up doing, was I started off with just an 1.5 inch hole, and then I worked basically fitting it up, trim a little bit till I got that perfect match for it to sit flush inside of there. Now to get it mounted, I need this to be need some strength that's here. This is what my column's actually mounted to. So it's going to work out in my favor because this actually comes straight down and immediately elbows. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. We're going to have fasteners, a series of grade 8 bolts that are going to be top and bottom, but I'm also going to have that bend. And so that bend's really going to give me that mechanical advantage to help hold this thing up. And then in theory, I haven't decided yet if I'm just going to let this ride against here or if I might even take and weld my template, or basically my piece, to this steering shaft to make it even stronger inside of there too. So now that we've got the template made, we've got it transferred to metal, let's go to cutting. So this is a super handy tool I've gotten from Klein Tools. Really, a lot of Klein tools for measuring angles and stuff I've really grown to like. So we're gonna get it set up through here, put it on 0. Yep, took me a minute. Forget how to use it sometimes. There we go. So I zeroed it out on the flat part that's through there, and then now I can get my angle set exactly where it needs to be. Make sure my pivot point's at the right place. End up at there we go. 138, 138.1. So that would have been 10 times harder to do versus guessing and checking and stuff. This thing's been just a lifesaver, especially for doing this frame and stuff. It's been really nice too. So the 138 degrees is what we're after. Scored the back edge again. I didn't show that the other day on the dash that I had done. You can see that score that's through there. So I marked a line. This is going to be my bend line, and by scoring it, or essentially cutting half of the metal through there, just makes it easier to bend thicker metal. Make sure I set this up right. I've got my marks that are on this side as well. Okay. And now we'll start beating on it. I don't want to do too much at one time through here, because I need to match that 138. Hit a little bit, double check. We're getting close. $137.8. Touch more. $134. Nope, going the wrong direction now. 130. So if you hit too much, just flip it over, do the same thing. $141. $136.9. Really don't have to get that picky with this. The bolts can finish it all for me, but just that way. 141. Come on. 138.3. I'll take it. To confirm, just make sure I'm not lying to you. Okay, so we got our piece made. I did do, whenever I got off camera, I did go ahead and drill a couple pilot holes, mark them out, square them out where they need to be. That way, we'll be able to fit this thing up there, drill a hole through this piece wherever it goes, and then be able to put our Cleco clips in. So let's see how we did first before we get too carried away. If you watched the first episode, I bet you thought I was going to drop that again, didn't you? Not today. All right, get ourselves centered into there. Get it picked up and into place. And there we go. We got just a little wiggle room around it. Perfect. All right, let's get the drill right quick. Okay, so center ourselves in the hole. Get him picked up, squared away. And then let's set a Cleco. Once again, if you don't got Cleco clips, you're making a mistake, because these things are awesome. Okay. One from below. Voila, there we have it. So I got that thing mounted up. Let's go ahead and put our steering shaft back in it right quick though. There we go. And there we have it. So this is pretty rugged right now. Once again, I haven't decided whether I want to take and weld this piece to this and it just locks it into place every single time you take the drive or the steering shaft out. Then I can also go through and I can clean up these corners too. So I really don't like jagged edges unless it's, you know, a specific panel that, I don't know, the looks matter with it. And so taking and cleaning up these corners, rounding them out might just make it look a little bit better. So we got this guy, everything's fitted up. We got steering shaft where he needs to be again. Now we need to get this guy permanently fit. So I'm gonna go through with a Sharpie and just mark the line where this guy's mating up at. And then I've got two options. I can completely drop this entire shaft out again to prep that, or I think I'm gonna try to see if I can just slide the shaft down, clean up around it, and then get it all fitted back up again. So that way we can get to welding this thing up. So I actually ended up pulling the steering shaft from kind of this column piece that's inside of here, and that provided, or how do I say it here? That made for way more of a fight than what it should have been with it. Absolute nightmare between bushings, and people had PVC pipe crammed inside of there, I'm sure, to make up for slop that's inside of it. But we finally got him out. The biggest reason why I want to take him out was, one, I don't want to take a risk of my welds, whenever I weld this to our bracket over there, coming in contact with that. It shouldn't have. We're spaced far enough out, but shouldn't have. In reality, it's two different things. So I went ahead and went on the safe side and took that shaft out. The other reason is because the threads where the actual steering wheel attached to that are all gapped up and nasty, so they're going to have to be rebuilt, rethreaded anyway. Just going to make it easier versus having it inside of the shaft the whole time. So back to what our main goal was, though, which was prepping this area so we can weld that on there. Gotta get my grinder. And then what we're going to use today, I actually got a bristle disc that's here. This is something that I picked up in the collision industry. I love it because it doesn't take metal away, it just takes the material off. So I'm not actually thinning this metal out by putting, say, an 80 grit disc on it. I'm just taking the painted surfaces and things off. So many different colors on here. I got to try to find where we're grinding again, which is right there. So I want to make sure and over clean this area. I don't want to run into risk of trying to, I don't know, one of my biggest aggravations is whenever, okay, I got a line that's this big, I'm going to prep it just a bit bigger than what that line is. There's no reason for it. This thing's all going to get painted anyway. So prep it bigger than what I need and really try to be specific and get all of that rust and different perforations out of there. At this point, we got the bulk of it off, but it's the little things like that that's going to be, if that lands in my weld area that I need it to be at, all that's going to do is cause porosity and a trash weld. So I don't want to take any risk of that. Those are the areas where there's pitting, and I really want to take the time to focus on those spots specifically. Which is where that bristle disc, having these little kind of spines that are there, does a really good job of getting inside of those just hard to reach areas. Okay, we got it cleaned up the best that we can with that. There's a little bit still in there with deep pitting, but I feel pretty good about that. So let's move over there. In reality, now that we got that shaft out of here, this should be easier to fit up in and out. I probably should have done that a long time ago. Okay. Something I'll mention too that I'm a really big fan of is whenever you fit something up, continually keep fitting it back up in that same manner that's there. I see it all the time, and hell, I used to do it a long time ago too, where it would just be like, okay, I'm going to fit it up, I'm going to throw it into place, there we go. I'm going to fit it up, I'm going to throw it into place. If I set it up the exact same way every single time, everything goes back every single time. So then whenever it actually gets to final fitment and final welding and all those things, I just have to throw this marker to this place, this clamp to this place, and everything else through there. So I don't know, it's helped me a lot with it. Just staying consistent and fit up the entire time. So as we look through here, we're prepped more than enough that's inside of that, and we can see where we are through there. So we're not done yet. In reality, before I put this column shaft, this column housing back in here, I still need to clean this bare metal. So I'm gonna have to pop him out right quick. We'll clean him up and we'll get to welding. Okay, so I got the Miller Matted 215 set up. I've had this welder for probably, I'd say almost 10 years now, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 8 years. I'd say probably close to 10 years that I've had this welder. I absolutely love it. It's been phenomenal welder. We're just on 110 volt today, but it does switch to 240, 220, 240, which I would rather prefer. It's interesting because I sit there and I think back to whenever I first started working on cars, and I'm in a gravel parking lot right outside my dad's shed thinking, man, I wish I had concrete. And then eventually he puts in a concrete pad. Now I got a concrete pad to work on, and I'm like, oh, this is great. It's like, man, I wish I had a roof over my head. Then I get a little shop that's got a single 110 bulb above it. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And then you evolve into eventually what I have here, and it's still man, I wish I had a 240, 220 volt hookup that's directly in the shop. Right now to run 220, I got to hook it up to a bigger generator that's there. So one of those things. Maybe one day I'll actually have 220 that's wired into the shop. But for now, we don't really need it. We'll just run 110 and have some fun with it. So this column that's through here is pretty thin compared to our kind of bracketing plate that we have inside of that. So I don't want to run it too hot. I need to focus more towards this plate and just let it kind of grab into that. I also don't think I'm going to run a continuous kind of stitch weld through there. I think I'm going to do a series of tats that are there. Not really sure how that's going to come up on camera, but we're going to try it and see what happens. I also want to mention too, try to put that ground clamp as tight to the material that you're welding as possible. I'm just right below where these Cleco clips are, so I'm as close as I can actually be to that. I'll get a series of tats started, probably one in each corner, and then start wheeling them around. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there. This piece does come out, so why not just take the time to take it out and make sure we got pretty welds all the way around it, but not too bad so far. Hopefully you guys can see that through the constant glitches of the welder, but not too bad as we go around. So let's pull this thing out, we'll finish welding it, and be able to get it bolted in final finish. Okay, so we're back with this thing. We now got ourselves solid mounted inside of there. I got this U-joint. I had taken it off to take that entire column out. Of course, there's going to be some bushings inside of here. There's actually a bearing up top that I've got ordered and on the way. But for right now, it's within enough tolerance that I think we can keep fitting with it. Same way this U-joint, you can see how wobbly and loose it is. It does have a grease fitting that was in there. A guy could maybe try to put some grease in it, but it just feels growly inside of there. You know, feels like there's enough grit and everything else over however many years of sitting outside. So we got him fitted up inside of there. Now we need to start getting ourselves finalized on this shaft. So we're finalized everything from here up, but now we need to get this shaft finalized inside of there too. So the first thing I want to mention is, up until this point, you see me using a lot of Sharpie marker. Sharpie marker can be used, I mean, for about anything. Milwaukee makes some really good ones. The problem I have with it on final fitment is I can get 3 or 4 different sets of Sharpie markers that are in this. For this final confirmation, I'm actually going to switch to a paint pen that's inside of there. So let's start off by getting, if you remember, our sleeve piece was 8 inches. Let's start off by just measuring down here 4 inches and get it exact. Get our paint pen, mark him at 4. You can see how much clearer that is to see. And once again, I've seen people that use 50 different styles of colors of paint pens and stuff. That's fine too. I say Sharpie marker can get me most of the way there, but for final stuff, I definitely want to have that paint pen that's there just to confirm. Get our sleeve down through there. Now we can go back to using our trick of putting vice grips on here too, just to kind of hold this at the line, and that way we don't have any play back and forth that's through there. So that's clamped right at the line. This thing can't move past that point to get there. I've got our other shaft. Get some of that debris and stuff off of there. Slide that other shaft down and in there. Let's go ahead and lube up those splines. I couldn't tell you how much time off camera I have spent trying to get all these splines cleaned out. If there's a tool that somebody knows of, I would love to know about it, to maybe see if there was like a spline cleaner specifically. Good. Until then, I guess I'm just gonna keep using pit tool to do it. All right, so that shaft will move up for right now. I do have just a single groove line that's there, so I need to make sure that it's in line with that bolt hole, and we are. Okay, so we got him confirmed now. Double check to make sure we're still good on that line. We are. Now I need to make that final fitment mark, but before I just go putting paint pen colors everywhere, I need to make sure of a few things. I need to make sure that up top, my steering column still placed like the actual shaft, the steering shaft column part, is actually still where it needs to be. I've got a pair of vice grips up there, kind of keeping it locked similar to that. And I also want to make sure that I don't have this thing fully collapsed. I want some movement that's there with it, so I want to make sure that I'm about halfway up before I go and make that mark that's there to confirm that. So I'm going to check that steering column right quick in the cab. And it's a good thing we did so, because it was actually down about 3/4 of an inch too low. So I'm going to take and try to put these guys here. That's not going to work because he's just going to keep going down. So I'm going to have to get higher up here. The threads are still messed up from whenever we did this, whenever I had to take this column out. So I'm actually working on an idea on how to, I mean, they're like messed up. So I'm working on an idea on how to get that mounted how I need to with it. For right now, that should be pretty close. Okay, we've got him roughly set to where we need to be. That guy's through there with just a touch of play. This guy's where he needs to be. Oh. He's good there. Okay, I think now we make that marker on that joint. These paint pens are pretty nice. They're really not that much more expensive than what a Sharpie marker is, but they're so much more vibrant for the color that they put down. But you do have to make sure that they dry. You seen that move right through there? It actually smeared my mark. Kind of blow on him, let him dry. Okay, at that point, we're pretty close. I'm gonna get this thing disassembled again, and then I'll meet you over there on the vise, and I'll show you what my plan of attack is for welding this, attaching this, everything else. So we'll see you in a bit. Okay, so we're getting closer with it here. You can see we kind of got this jig built up with, I got a couple 2x4s notched on the bottom just to hold it good and solid. And then you see this piece of angle iron I have here. Now I did this on purpose because I really need this to be straight, and this angle iron I'm going to use to my advantage to do that. Now even as it sits, you see that rocking back and forth. Even if I hold it, what you're going to be hard to see is there's actually movement within these shafts that are here. So I've actually got an idea on, I'm going to take this other piece of pipe that's equivalent to the same size that we have, and I'm going to split it in half so that ideally then it can get sat inside of there. I guess a guy could, no, a guy couldn't do that. I was gonna say, I guess a guy could just slide it on the end, but that would be inaccurate because then you'd be stuck with a piece of pipe back there. So I think that's what we're gonna do is we're gonna split this guy in half and basically have him to hold these bottom sides equal all the way across with it. Okay, so we got this thing pretty well mopped up. I like it quite a bit. Now we need to get our cleaning and stuff done. We still don't have any cleaning done where our weld joints are. I think I'm actually going to take, we're going to get this started welding. I think I'm actually going to take that drill bit and try to make kind of an indention crater into this to get us even better penetration into that solid rod versus trying to stick it like a piece of bubble gum to it or actually be able to get welded into it there. But it's hard to get a camera angle at it. But we're sitting in there pretty well. They really don't have a lot of wiggle. Everything's parallel clamped. I got it clamped kind of more to this face, as you see through there. I really want to clamp it down into that groove, but with a point on there, I just don't have that opportunity to do that. So now we tear it all apart, get everything cleaned up, do another mock-up, and we should be good. All right, there we are post welding. So got my edges done, got all my plugs done throughout there, and honestly, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I think the welds all worked out fantastic. I'm happy with the welds, solid welds. But you're going to be asking yourself, you're trusting welds, turning mid tires, putting it in an area it's not supposed to be at. What if it snaps while going down the road? I'm equally concerned about that too. I want to have some type of security system inside of there that says, okay, if for some reason a weld breaks while we're beating on this thing, we don't want to get back on the road and now have it snap. So I'm letting this cool off right now, but then I want to actually take and drill a hole all the way through. So probably be somewhere about right in here on each end of it. Drill a hole all the way through to the other side and be able to put a bolt that's inside of that. And all that's going to be is just a safety net in case something goes, sour, something breaks and we don't catch it. It doesn't break driving down the road at 55 miles an hour, getting ready to go around a turn. So that's going to be our next step, is going to be getting this thing back in the vise, let it cool down, get it back in the vise, drill a hole all the way through, and basically put 2 safety pin bolts that are inside of that just to be safe. Just like that, we got our 2 bolts that are through there. It's kind of like our safety. So once again, if any of these welds fail while we're just driving in general, whatever other reason, we are protected now because we've got these bolts that are through there. And this goes all the way through the pipe that's there, as well as goes all the way through the shaft and our kind of sectioning pipe that's there too. So any case something fails, it's going to take a lot of failing that we're going to have to obviously notice before anybody gets hurt. So that's what I really like about this. Yes, there's, this is, how do I want to say it? Not sketchy, but this is the best way that we can shorten this shaft without spending money. There's no reason why we can't have it be safe with backups in the long run too. So I'm happy with it. I really actually am happy with it. From an idea in my head to what we've got now, I think it's worked out pretty well. I even thought too that a guy could take and weld the end of these bolts that are there to where you had this kind of protected shaft inside of that versus a bolt that could also break. I ultimately didn't. I haven't decided on that. I think we still leave it as actually hardware. I know I need to get some shorter bolts that's there additionally to it, but why not get this thing back in and see if it actually works? All right, so now that we got everything bolted up, let's see if it actually did anything or not. Were we successful? I'm saying so. Now I'll show you here coming up too, a lot of these joints are just kind of loosely put together. That's why I kept it on the wheel dollies. I just don't really want to bolt everything up tight just yet. Let's get up a little bit closer though and see what we got to work with here. So we do have that guy fastened in place, that kind of makeshift U-joint, whatever Jeep did there. Got our bolts that are there. Now I noted earlier that I'd like to get some shorter ones. I will say that that one looks like it's going to hit, but it comes very, very close, but doesn't actually quite hit. But definitely need shorter bolt that's inside of that. And then once again, we might end up welding the nut to it, or maybe even just welding the whole thing, like the stud to the nut that's there. So we'll just have to see what happens. There's our splice though. New U-joint, which needs to be coming here real soon. I got it ordered today. Hopefully we'll get it put in. That's why you don't see these guys bolted in tight that are there. Bracketry I like, but I don't like the harsh corners that are here. So I want to pull this whole thing back apart. I want to kind of roll the corners that are there as well. And then get final bolts that are inside of it. And then we come to this side. We still have the issue of the threads being trashed. They got trashed just taking the thing off. I actually ended up having to cut that nut off. It's there. So I got a few ideas on how to fix it. I don't know if we'll show it or not, but if nothing else, maybe just be a quick glimpse of it. What we need to do now, this is the exciting part that I've kind of been waiting for the last, year to do, which is that we got a lot of this plating and stuff secured. We got the steering box mostly secured that's inside of it, but it's time to make this all permanent. Now that we know that our steering's set, that everything works, everything inside of it, Now we need to get that stuff permanently welded inside of that. So I love cutting, welding, grinding. Can't wait to see what the next episode has.